What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Alpha First for a new show that we're kicking off today. And I am joined today by Brian from Santiment. Very happy to have you on with me today, Brian, and looking forward to the shows that we'll do together. But for those that are not aware of Santiment or what you do, you want to give them a lowdown so they know?
For sure. Great to be here, Josh. So, Santiment is all about on chain social and development activity metrics. Many of you might have come across one of our social media posts or one of our videos we've done over the past few years. We were founded way back in 2016. I've been with the team since about 2020. And, we have really come a long way when it comes to analyzing markets, understanding, the likelihood of a price rise or a price fall, especially over long-term intervals. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of go over some of our best metrics and explain what we do and kind of what the state of the markets are pointing to right now.
Yeah, I love Santiment because it's very interesting because it takes like on-chain data and mixes it with social sentiment, and that's very unique. And you don't get that from like Glassnode or CryptoQuant or CoinGlass and all these other analytics sites. And it gives you like the ability to look at the market through a different lens. And more often than not, I've seen it actually be quite correct. So definitely excited to dive into this and show the people what it's all about.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we're unbiased, and what we really want to do is give people an idea of what the metrics are pointing to without giving investment advice. That's not what we're about, but we can definitely point to what the divergences are showing and give people a pretty accurate assessment of where we're at.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, you ready to dive in? It looks like we got some people here that are excited to see what we got.
Let's make it happen. Yeah, I'll share my screen here, and we'll kind of just use the tabs that we prepared as a visual as we go through the markets and where we're at right now. Now, obviously, things are a bit down. People are kind of depressed, showing some FUD right now, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and for good reason. It's been a frustrating month or so after we saw so much euphoria pretty much precisely 1 month ago prior to Trump's inauguration. And as we kind of talked about in some of our content back then, we were warning people this could be a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news situation where there's a bit of a letdown after Trump is officially inaugurated. And that's kind of what happened. There was so much baked in hype and market cap inflation from the moment it was announced he was elected back on November 5th here in the US. And there was kind of an inevitable letdown period after everything basically came to fruition. The expected happened. He was inaugurated. And this is kind of eerily similar to what we saw way back in January of 24, about 13 months ago. We had so much hype at the end of 2023 related to the Bitcoin ETFs, which were unprecedented at the time. We couldn't believe that we were finally going to get 9 Bitcoin ETFs, and everyone was hyped about it. Then they were actually made official in mid-January 24, and we see like this 2 to 3 week plummet in price. And everyone's like, what the heck? I thought this was good for crypto. Well, this is exactly what Santiment was built for, was to analyze when the crowd gets overly euphoric about an event, whether it's Trump being elected or ETFs being released. Usually it's the rumor or the first little crumbs of that news story that causes the price to go up. And then when the inevitable happens and it comes to fruition, that's when the top generally occurs. And it's not until people sort of pump the brakes a little and go, okay, prices still have to grow organically. That's that humility from the crowd is usually the point where you can start to buy back in a little bit. So we're at that point now where I think we're hitting that humility time frame after a month has gone by from Trump being inaugurated, and we've seen enough capitulation and FUD where now is the point where we may be seeing a bit of a bounce, and we'll try to see some metrics that justify that throughout this call.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely kind of bleak out there in terms of how people feel. I think a lot of people expected Trump to get elected in and sworn in and just start hammering out crypto stuff, and that's not been the
Yeah.
case. You know, they've got to do their due diligence and all that. There's a lot of learning that they have to do too. So I think that's kind of what you pointed to. You know, everyone's starting to feel a little bit humiliated.
Exactly. And we've had nothing, I wouldn't say nothing, but we've had a high frequency of, meme coin rug pulls and people feeling a little jaded over all the negative stories that have come out. And it's, rug pulls are happening all the time, but they get a lot more prominent attention from the mainstream media when it's happening while prices are disappointing people. So, uh, people point to these stories and say, look, this is why crypto's falling. Well, the reality is there are scams and meme coins that fall off a cliff all the time, but they don't really get this level of attention until, Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and all the top caps are starting to struggle at the same time. So, the reason I started with this screen is I just wanted to give a quick update on development activity. So what we do here is we measure notable GitHub events for every project out there that has a GitHub repository, which is most of them. And we look at all like non mundane activity, like Slack updates are excluded from our algorithm where we calculate development activity. And then we actually can sort by the top 10 projects that are seeing the most development over any given period of time. And many you're going to be familiar with. It's not a coincidence that a lot of these projects are in the top 50, top 100 market cap. And they tend to rise to the top over time. So especially when markets are disappointing and kind of fading or going sideways, that's when a lot of people can reshuffle their portfolios, look to invest in some long-term plays. And development activity is definitely more of a long-term metric. Don't expect, internet computer, because it's seeing the most development activity, it's not going to just pop 20% tomorrow. But over the span of a year or two, you might see it continue to rise up the market cap ranks because it has a team that is innovating and trying to improve the project. It's up to you to decide how efficient some of these development teams are, and that's what white papers are for and some of the updates from their respective social media channels. But long story short, at the very least, if you're trying to avoid rug pulls, avoid projects that might be up to nefarious things, high development activity is a good justifier that the team is probably really trying to have a long-term position in the crypto sector. And that's why we like to check out these projects, and we give frequent updates on different sectors, NFT sector, all that stuff. So I highly recommend checking this out and by going to the screener page anytime you want.
Yeah, I definitely use this data all the time. I'm not going to lie. I steal it from your guys' Twitter posts constantly for
Love it.
streams because it's great data. You know, a lot of people don't understand exactly what you said. You know, it seems so pointless and like, why would I care? But it shows that they're building something. You know, it's no surprise that you see Cardano, Hedera, Ethereum, and, I guess the ICP on there. Yeah, I mean, it's great stuff to know.
Most of these are pretty well respected projects, and that's because their teams are constantly working and usually updating the masses on what they're doing, so people have context behind all of this development activity too.
Yeah. I'm always just surprised to see Polkadot and Polkadot parachains on there because I never hear anything from them. But they're
Yeah,
always doing something.
they're kind of an anomaly, and they share their repository with Kusama, by the way. So you'll always see these two as identical numbers. But yeah, they actually were like in the 1 or 2 or 3 position for most of the past 3 to 4 years. And then all of a sudden, over the past year, we started to see a ton of reshuffling with Internet Computer and Chainlink. Cardano has always been up there, Hedera, Starknet. These are projects that have very recently come into the top 5. So it's really cool to see.
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I don't think I've ever seen Starknet on the top 10.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe just in the past 3 months or so, they started to pop in there.
Got it.
So besides that, I wanted to at least touch on the ETFs. So I just mentioned them as kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news event from a year ago. And now we're starting to see the true impact and how often, people are really using these ETFs as an alternative to trading on chain or owning on chain. And it's still high. So this is a graph that just shows the volume of the top 7 ETFs that we have transparent data on. And we're still seeing, based on the latest data, about $1.8 billion or so per day, sometimes well over 2 billion. This big spike here was 13.46 billion. So tons of money still going on. And in terms of inflow and outflow, we can actually check a few individual um, ETFs and see which ones are getting, a lot of money moving in versus moving out. Really, what matters the most is the net of all of those ETFs. And it's kind of been back and forth. Lately, a few decent sized outflow days, but nothing really concerning here when I look at a few of these, like IBIT or FBTC. And I won't go through all of them. Like FBTC did have some pretty big outflow days, but they're kind of being countered by inflows. So, long story short, it's kind of like business as usual for the ETFs right now, with inflows and outflows kind of at a net neutral at the moment. And I know
Yeah.
that's kind of a hot topic, especially when markets are on a slide like they have been.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we cover I look at the ETF inflows basically daily, or the flows in general basically daily. And BlackRock always seems to basically never have outflow days. I think there's like 5 or
Yeah.
so total since their inception. But I think a lot of the outflows that we actually end up seeing is just because of traditional finance investors, your money market funds, or your all your basically your funds all together. They just trade the ETFs like they would anything else. So they
Right.
just react to news. Their algorithms see a keyword and they dump it. It's not yet being treated like Bitcoin, truly.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's kind of its own entity for the time being. And I think the only thing people are worried about is if we suddenly see tons of major outflows going on, meaning the key stakeholders of from some of these institutionals are dropping out. And I'm not really seeing that. I don't think we have seen that since the ETFs were first instilled a year ago. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. All I ever get worried about is Grayscale. Grayscale opens up an ETF and they just unload their bags.
I know. I know. They're kind of on a different plane. And we do have GBTC data for Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust. And as you'd expect, because they were the OG, I think they were introduced way back in 2015. So they're mostly always going to see outflows, just like BlackRock is always going to see inflows for the indefinite future. So if you're wondering where a lot of the money is coming from, as you just said, they're constantly being traded between a little bit and reshuffled between ETFs as people decide which ETFs they can rely upon. And GBTC is the one that's mostly getting money continually moved out of it, even though it's much less recently than it had been close to a year ago. So yeah, Grayscale is always kind of the anomaly.
Yeah. And I think it's no surprise that we see a lot of money move out of them, especially as investors decide, on a new ETF and things like that. Because if memory serves properly, Grayscale has some of the worst fees for their ETF also.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's the main reason they're not, getting any prominent attention like the others. If they lowered their fees, who knows what would happen? But we'll probably continue to just see a mild exodus of money from them until they start to have more competitive fee rates.
Yep.
Now, one thing I wanted to transition to, which is related to the institutional money we were talking about, is the actual on-chain whale and shark wallets and how much they are holding. Because one thing about Sentiment is we've kind of condensed our mantra about why markets move the way they move into 2 categories. One is key stakeholders, the whales and the sharks. Are they accumulating right now? If so, prices are over the long term likely going to follow their path. The largest addresses and holders in crypto have a massive pull on where prices go next, and they have enough capital to continue to drive up prices at their whim, essentially, especially when the crowd is turning the other direction and dropping their coins on the cheap to them because they're afraid of a collapse, right? So that's kind of what's happening right now a little bit. Um, small retails are dropping coins at a really high rate, and they're going into institutionals' pockets, where they're just collectively getting more and more coins. This green line here is representing the collective amount of coins held, Bitcoin specifically, by 10 plus BTC wallets. And as you can see, they really started to move up rapidly beginning around mid October. And sure enough, that was right when the bull market started. They, right around October 12th, 13th or so, they jump up. Um, in one day, they added about 3,700 coins. That's a massive amount. And they just did not stop until they took a little bit of a hibernation right after Christmas. And that's kind of when markets became a little bit shaky. And then they said, okay, we waited long enough. We're going to start adding once again. Right about 5 weeks ago, January 15th, which was just before Trump got inaugurated, they resumed their accumulation and they have not stopped since. So even though prices have kind of gone like this, that's what these dark green bars are. That's representing daily price closes. Uh, the whale and shark accumulation's gone like this. That's what we would call a bullish divergence. And we like the look of this a lot. And it's probably one of the best arguments for why we don't think crypto is going to fall off a giant cliff. It might retrace a little longer, but as long as the whales and sharks are moving up with their collective holdings, we can only fall so far.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, that's really awesome about the platform that you can do the measuring, you can draw lines, everything. I actually didn't even realize you could do that. So another neat thing that you can do on Santiment there. But yeah, it is wild. Like, and people always complain to me, well, if the whales are buying so much, and you can even throw a rocket, um,
Exactly.
why is price not going up? And ultimately, it's either ETFs or it's OTC or whatever. But it is nice to see that we do have that bullish divergence in this very clear to see way, because typically you're combining several different charts to try to get this same visual here.
Exactly. And you can customize this any way you'd like to. If you want to look at what the tiny holders are doing, they're going to be a good counter indicator. So let's say we look at just the wallets, any non-empty wallet. So it doesn't include actual zero, but maybe they have 1/8 of a Satoshi. And we'll just look at any non-empty wallet that have wallets that have less than 0.01 BTC. And they're basically moving the opposite direction. They were holding their most right before the bull market started. And as prices rose, they said, oh man, we better take profit. Prices are above 60K now. That was close to when we saw that last all time high. So they basically just started selling and selling and selling to these whales and sharks until they finally said, oh man, we got to get back in mid-December. And they got rewarded for a very short amount of time, maybe like a week. And then you can see how much they bought at the top. So they basically did the exact opposite. And it's even more prominent when you look at just these really small wallets on how they sold the bottom and then they bought the top. And then they got a bunch of FUD and sold after we bottomed again. Prices rose. You can see how they just react after prices have already kind of done their thing. And that's what creates the tops and bottoms, essentially, because this red line is representing the more novice and retail traders. There are plenty of smart people who are in this tier of 0.01 BTC. I understand that's still a lot of money, but collectively, this is the counter indicator and the representation of what the crowd thinks is going to happen next. And the crowd is usually the side that is getting it wrong, and prices move the opposite direction of their expectation.
Yeah, and it looks like according to that they may be getting to a capitulation point
Yeah,
because
I mean they're at their lowest point, holding about a quarter of a percentage of the entire supply, which is the lowest we've seen in quite some time. I'd have to go back, I think, multiple years.
oh really?
Yeah, it's been about a year and a half or so, a little under a year and a half since they held this little amount of coins.
Right. Now, and of course, this is just holders in general. This isn't like short term holders or anything like that, right? It's just wallets
Yeah,
with a balance. Yeah.
exactly. You can either look at it by the percent of the entire supply that Bitcoin currently has, or you can look at it by total coins. Either way, it's basically just objectively how much are they holding at any given time.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, let's hope that their capitulation is near. And
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, the longer they go down, the better the argument gets for an upcoming bounce. So we're actually rooting for this red line to continue to go down and this green line to go up.
yeah, and that's why I like sentiment too, is because you can see this. And they always say like don't fight the trend, right? The trend is your friend, and then the crowd
Mhm.
is always wrong. And here we can see that, there's way more small holders than there is large holders,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So that is the crowd. And I would argue, I mean, obviously a bull, so I'm going to argue that they're very, very wrong. But it's gone on long enough now, I would say.
exactly. Yeah, and you can actually, so we can see how many. Let me get rid of this silly rocket emoji for a minute. You can see how many total holders there are. I'll get rid of these two. So this yellow line represents every non-empty wallet, regardless of size. There's about 54.47 million total non-empty wallets on Bitcoin right now. And we can measure that versus the, uh, sorry, we got to go to number of addresses. We'll just put it on a separate chart. And we'll just look at each of these tiers. So there are about 30.63 million that are under 0.001 BTC, 11.48 million that hold between 0.001 and 0.01. If we just combine those, this blue line shows 42.12 million of the, if I go back up, 54.47, call that what, roughly a little over 80% of all wallets are under 0.001 BTC. Because it's just a lot easier to make a tiny, tiny wallet. Doesn't take a lot of money to do that versus a wallet that's holding over $1 million worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes me think of all my normie friends. Oh, I'll check out Bitcoin. I threw $10 at it.
Yeah.
So that's typically how that goes. Dodger Blue has a question though. He's curious
Sure.
if a wallet on Coinbase is included in the chart, or is this
Yeah.
only on chain? Oh, it is.
Yeah. Any wallet. So exchange wallets have to be on chain too. They're easily discoverable. They're not proprietary. Yes, there's a small amount that might be in some sort of secret location, or we haven't discovered it yet, but call it 99 point something percent of wallets that exist are going to be publicly on chain and can be integrated right into our data automatically. So exchange wallets are very much included, which is why there's always going to be a bit of an asterisk, especially if we look at whale wallets and just say, look at all wallets that hold 10 or more BTC. Well, yeah, a certain amount of those are absolutely exchange wallets and aren't going to be reflective of true trader behavior. They're just liquidity wallets, right? So we understand that. But if you combine all of them, you'll see a definite trend between what 10 plus BTC wallets are doing and where prices typically go next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, another question here from Chester. Thank you for the super chat, Chester. Is the increase in total small wallets usually bullish?
No, the opposite. So it depends what tier you're looking at, but we like to just say, give us the 0.0 to 0.01 BTC wallets. And over time, yes, there will be points like this where they'll jump in on the bull run. But when they really get aggressive, that usually means we're getting close to a top, like here or even here. And here's a great example too. So yeah, they'll try to ride the wave and FOMO in and be right for a short amount of time. But especially if we looked at this by, since this is number of wallets, a better representation is if we go back to the original view of balance of addresses. So we'll just add the two tiniest tiers and put on price here. I can put it on the right chart. Let's try that again. Right here. So like this was a concrete example. Like everyone is liquidating after they hear about the FTX collapse in November of 2022, all the small wallets, and then prices absolutely explode, and all these small wallets that were dumping end up kicking themselves and try to start FOMOing back in. And eventually they get burned from FOMOing too hard, and we start to retrace. And you can see that they have ever since then been dumping, even after prices rebounded. So it's not perfect by any means, but if you just kind of monitor what the largest wallets are doing and follow their lead and avoid doing what the very tiny wallets are doing and doing essentially doing the opposite of them, you'll more often than not over a long period of time come out on top with your trading and investing decisions.
Yeah, I think it's really unique how you have the inverse correlation there. And it makes total sense because you've got your people that hear about it at work from a coworker or, on the news or radio or something like that. And like I said, they throw $10 at Bitcoin and then they're like, oh no, my $10 is worth $5. I better sell, and
Yeah,
obviously Bitcoin didn't drop that much, but still, it's the point. But
exactly. And another way, if you want to look at what the crowd's doing, if we segue really quickly into some social metrics, I love to look at the positive versus negative sentiment commentary across social media. So we can actually measure how bullish or bearish the crowd is getting at any given moment. So we'll pull all of the commentary on Twitter/X, Reddit, Telegram, 4chan, Bitcoin Talk, and Farcaster, those 6 social platforms. Any public comments come in, goes through our algorithm, and we'll see a comment that says like Bitcoin to the moon with a little rocket emoji. Okay, that's going to be attributed as a positive comment. Bitcoin's a scam, it's going to go to 0. That's going to be a negative comment. And we blend all of those together. Plenty of them are going to be neutral, and it'll just be a question about the tech or something. But we have enough data when we combine all those platforms where we can get a pretty good idea of when they're getting overly bullish or overly bearish. And that's what this green chart represents. The ratio of how many positive comments are pouring in versus negative comments directly. So when you see really high marks, that's when you get big tops like this. This was a perfect top. This was a perfect top. The 2 points over the 2 biggest points in 2025 where the crowd was bullish were the perfect times to sell, essentially. And then, here you see the opposite. People are very negative with almost as many negative comments as positive comments. That's pretty rare because people have a bullish bias most of the time. So when it's actually pretty close to negative, or this one, it's even below negative. If you look at the top left of my screen where it says 0.9483, that means the positive versus negative ratio is under 1. So there's literally more negative comments about BTC than positive. And it was right after this crash happened. And then, hey, what do you know? Prices recover after this big FUD spike from the crowd. So just more evidence as to how the crowd typically gets things wrong.
yeah, it's interesting that over the last couple days here, we're seeing sentiment kind of actually pick up, but price is still going down. I'm wondering what the positive sentiment was. It must have been around the FTX creditors or something, I'm assuming.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I also wouldn't call this too much of a pickup. Like if we were to draw, just kind of eyeball the average line over the past 3 months or so, it's right around here. So anything below this line, I'll just take this off for a minute so we can see it more clearly. This green line being below the average still gives me the impression we're having more of a negative bias from the crowd than positive.
Yeah, for
So it's
sure.
bounced a tiny bit, but yeah, I mean, if prices really start to threaten going below 90K, for example, those psychological support or resistance levels play a huge factor in how people start to perceive the markets. Oh, Bitcoin's below 90K. I guess I should get out. It's not in a bull market anymore, right? Like that's how a lot of people think. And that ends up being a perfect buy signal. And we see another huge negative, sentiment day like back here in December. That's what we're hoping to see soon.
Yeah, and it looks like that. Yeah, there's our biggest liquidation event in history there. The what right before January 5th, I think that says. Yeah, or
Yeah.
February 5th. I apologize.
Oh yeah, yeah, right here.
Yeah.
exactly. That was a huge, huge capitulation day, and we saw a tiny bit of a bounce, but not enough to be too excited just yet.
Yeah. Uh, Chester wants to know if he says Bitcoin to the moon enough, he can trigger the bull run, right?
Other way around. If you
Yeah.
if you see a ton of positive commentary, that's going to be indicative that the crowd is um, getting too bullish and we're going to go down. But um, of course, this is our metrics are relying on authentic
Yeah.
commentary rather than trying to manipulate the algorithm of sentiment. We certainly don't control the markets. Um, and if you did try to spam, good luck keeping up with all the AI bots out there who have a mind of their own, anyways.
Right. Um, I'm just going to say Roadlil, can this data be accessed through the Sentiment Pro membership? Sentiment.
Yeah. So just a quick promo of our platform. I don't want to spend too much time promoting us. I'd rather just talk markets. But yeah, you can just go to our pricing page and you can sign up for a free default plan. And this gives you 2 free weeks to just enjoy all the metrics we're showing. And then after that, you can become a pro member, extend your trial. If you need a little more time, just talk to our support team. We'll usually help people out a little if they are on the fence and need a little more time. But yeah, for the most part, just become a pro member, $49 a month or $529 a year, which is a 10% discount. And you get essentially everything that's being shown here. And our support team, which is super awesome and helpful in clarifying any metrics, because we know that some can be complex and have a little bit of a learning curve, but we want everyone to be able to grasp it after, a certain amount of time just exploring our metrics. So yeah, that's how you do so.
Definitely. Yeah, and Brian's got there's an academy on there, a ton of pre-made charts and stuff like that, so you can easily go through and look at data. And if you're interested, the link's in the description down below. You can easily sign up and get over there.
Yeah, and we've got a YouTube channel where we'll upload a copy of this stream alongside Josh after this one's over, and you can check out all of our tutorials we've done, and it gets you up to speed pretty quick.
Awesome, very cool, very cool. Yeah, because there's a ton you can do on there.
I know. And before we run out of time, I know we want to keep this to about 30 minutes, but maybe we should touch on a few of the trending coins, particularly Libra, which we were talking about before the call, Josh.
Yeah, definitely. I got time.
For sure. So this essentially is a dashboard that's giving us an idea of which assets are having the highest increases in discussion rate compared to their normal resting averages. So if you see Libra and Sol up here, it doesn't mean they're being talked about more than Bitcoin at any given time, but based on where they're normally at, they're seeing a massive, massive spike in interest or discussions across those 6 social media platforms I talked about. So Libra is the obvious one. It's obviously in a huge controversy right now with the Argentine president, Javier Milei. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And he had like a big endorsement of the coin right before it crashed. So there seems to be a lot of legal action and alleged fraud allegations out there right now. Josh, do you want to add any more context and maybe give an idea of what you've been seeing?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild. Their Argentinian lawyers are actually begging the U.S. Justice Department to file charges against them and
Yeah.
basically, investigate them. Not only that, there's tons of talk about basically insider trading that was going on before the launch. You got Dave Portnoy being offered $5 million to do it, to talk about the project, and he ended up actually giving that back. So that's a little bit interesting. But now Hayden, the guy that's behind it all, is sitting on a pile of $110 million. And there are actually screenshots of him in chats with people saying that his goal with this project was to extract maximum value. So it was not done with good intentions, and I don't know why people keep on finding this guy.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. There was also for those who like CoffeeZilla, I personally respect him a lot. He put
Yeah.
like an hour-long video up where he was interviewing that guy. I forget his name already, but yeah, they talked a lot about the situation, and the guy was actually pretty candid. So I don't know if it affects the crowd's opinions at all. They seem to be pretty outraged at anything to do with this project, but highly recommended to check that interview out.
Yeah, it's a good one. I've only made it like halfway through. I'm just always so busy, and I'll play like 10 minutes
Yeah.
and then I got to go do something else. But that's what I was really surprised about when you actually first went to this page. There's actually a lot of positive sentiment around Libra
Yeah,
too.
so Solana's in the middle, and that's interesting because they've been plummeting like crazy. But Toshi is the one that kind of caught both of our eyes, Josh. And it seems like the asset has quite a social media following at the moment, with an extreme bullish sentiment from them.
Yeah. Toshi's an interesting one. It's been around for a long time. And it kind of caught some fire earlier on in its life, but it wasn't really until like November, December that we started to see the base ecosystem pick up again, and ultimately Toshi followed. Toshi is one of the first projects, I believe, from the base ecosystem that Coinbase has actually listed, and that sent it absolutely flying. Um, Maybe we'll see more, but yeah, they've got a great community over there at Toshi.
Yeah, and it seems like their recent marketing campaign where they're talking about associating Toshi with Armstrong's cat to kind of match the campaign from last week with Broccoli and CZ's cat. So we saw this billboard has gone a little viral, posted just today. There's nothing like massively viral when we look on social media for Toshi, but it just seems like there's a pretty positive contingency and lots of likes and retweets to, Toshi being on Times Square and showing where it is in terms of market cap, ascending a bit, stuff like that. So it had a big pump in late January and then kind of fell just like everything else, and hasn't really. What's interesting is usually you'll see a trending token show up because it's on like an isolated pump or a decoupled from the markets. Toshi really hasn't, yet it's getting a lot of attention right now. So I'm very interested to see how the next few days or weeks end up going for the meme coin.
Yeah, that is rather interesting. I'm gonna have to pay some more attention to it. I mean, so more often than not, when you see those activity spikes like that, like
Mhm.
Toshi has, what do you typically see with price afterwards?
So it's all dependent on the trajectory of the coin at the time that the crowd gets excited. So if it's pumping like crazy and all of a sudden the crowd comes out of the woodwork and starts talking about it, that's usually a top signal. That's a bad sign that the coin is about to reverse and start to retrace because of all of the greed and crowd FOMO that's pouring in. Tochi is not pumping right now. It's kind of declining at the same rate as everything else. And all of a sudden it sees this huge social media spike. Uh, More often than not, this is a good sign. I'm definitely not going to advise anyone to just jump in a meme coin just because the crowd is starting to get wind of it. Um, but historically, this is a better sign than average because we're seeing a bunch of hype around a token that isn't in the middle of a scam. At least I don't think so. It is a meme coin, so all of you are going to have different opinions on whether they should ever be touched in the first place. But Toshi is on a slide right now and suddenly getting a bunch of social volume without being in hot water. So that can actually be a good sign more often than not if Bitcoin and crypto markets can start to show a few signs of recovery and some profit redistributions can start going back into meme coins.
Very interesting. Definitely going to have to keep a close eye on Toshi and see how that plays out, especially with the on sentiment or sentiment as well. Somebody said sentiment earlier, sentiment earlier.
Oh yeah,
I went backwards.
that's exactly where we got the name. So people get it confused all the time. It's just a play on words of sentiment.
Yep. We do have this question here too that we should probably answer. Thank you for the super chat, Roadlull. He asks, is the crypto market practically based on whale movements who use liquidity to maximize their profits? I mean, personally, I would say more often than not, but I'm assuming he's meaning due to your data. So,
Yeah. So if I'm understanding the question, is he just asking, are whales capital and the way their behaviors are showing up on chain, does that correlate with the way prices are fluctuating?
Exactly. Yeah. That's how I
Yeah,
take it.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of Exhibit A that we were showing with. If I can find my tab, I've got way too many tabs open. That's what the 10 plus BTC wallet graphic was here. So just this bright green line by itself, this is just showing like the last 3 months of accumulation. You can see how when they start to flatten, prices get choppy or move down. When they start to move up, if you give it enough time, prices will usually follow, especially if we go back over time and I make this axis not go off the chart like so. So, yeah, like right here, for example, 2022, for those who were around back then, not a fun year. What a coincidence. Whales were dumping all the way back beginning in early February, and prices ended up continuing to fall off a cliff until about a month after that big FTX collapse happened and retailers were running for the hills. But that's when whales and sharks started to say, okay, Bitcoin at 16K, I'm good with that. And they started to accumulate again, and prices eventually started to recover along with them. So, in short, yeah, it is very much a whale's playground, as we like to put it. And if they are accumulating and using their capital, they can push up prices and kind of punish the retailers that are doing the opposite actions as them.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Roll Low went on to ask. He asked, for example, they push prices down or up to get discounted entries, and retail
Mhm.
traders get liquidated. Yeah, I mean that's a mixture of whale movements and also market makers. You know, you've got exchanges that will wick out and very much so liquidate holders. But yeah, I mean you got to figure your retail investors. You know, your normies like me and everybody else that's probably watching right now. We don't have enough money to move the market, right? It takes these multi-million dollar buys to actually move the needle on a multi-trillion dollar asset.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look at MicroStrategy, also like now known as just Strategy. They whenever they put in a significant amount of capital, we at least see a temporary jump in prices. I know they don't report instantly, so that's probably a security measure on their part. But as soon as they announce publicly that they've just added X amount of billions of dollars into Bitcoin, we at least see a temporary jump, and then it's about how the domino effect plays out as a result of that move.
yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Yeah, I mean it's gonna things gonna, I believe that things are gonna get really interesting here soon, especially with players like Strategy and all these other companies that are currently accumulating Bitcoin, because soon that OTC market is going to dry up without a doubt.
Mhm.
Right now, there's I believe only 130,000 ish Bitcoin in that OTC market, and just in January, Taylor bought like 75,000. Right, so we're getting close to the OTC market being dried up, and these purchases have to go through somewhere, so they're going to go through spot.
That's a great point. I haven't even thought of that perspective, but it makes a lot of sense. There's only a limited supply left, so those lucky enough to grab them can definitely drive markets the way they want.
Yeah, definitely. Road Blow, yes, we will. I believe we are making this a weekly thing. Glad you are enjoying the video. And yes, Brian's got a great approach to the market and the tools that he has available to him. Um, was there anything else that you wanted to go over right now, or did anybody have any questions? I'm not sure how you're doing on time either.
I'm good. I mean, we could stop it now, do a final like 2-minute recap, whatever you're feeling. Any final questions on your end, just from what your community is typically looking for in terms of daily market fluctuations?
Um, Mostly in my community right now, a lot of people are talking about Sui and Soul or Sui and Soul.
Yeah.
Um, everybody's trying to decide which one's going to be the winner. I don't know what do you have around that, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I had this insight literally right before the call. We put this up about Solana's sentiment. So they're seeing a big jump in discussion right now, which is interesting. About 12% of all coin discussions so far today are about Solana, which is massive, a lot
It's
more than
crazy.
they usually get. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure most of it is related to just its really disappointing price performance. They've definitely uh, underperformed even compared to the rest of altcoins that have been plummeting, especially top caps like Ethereum's holding up a little better, Cardano, Toncoin, a lot of these top 10, top 15 coins are struggling, but not quite as much as Solana. So that's caught this attention of all traders, regardless of whether they're long-term Solana holders or not. And then we get this big social dominance spike along with a big negative commentary spike. So this is the lowest ratio of positive versus negative commentary since the Trump inauguration on the 20th, 21st, the day after. And that tells me that the crowd is capitulating pretty hard toward the, I believe it's what, number 5 or number 6 market cap right now, depending on whether Binance Coin is above or below it at this time. But yeah, the native commentary is very real right now. And usually this is a good setup for a bounce. Again, asterisk, this isn't investment advice. And it's all going to depend on whether Bitcoin and the overall crypto sector can start to stabilize and begin to show signs of recovery. But if it does, coins that have this kind of setup with very negative commentary and very high discussion rates are primed to be a big rebound candidate if the powers that be, mainly the whales and sharks, decide to pounce on this opportunity and say, we're going to go ahead and scoop up all the retail coins that are being dropped like flies right now.
Yeah, and I definitely think that Solana will be one of those. I feel like Solana is just kind of currently under attack, mostly largely because of Pump Fund. A lot of people are hating on Pump Fund right now. And then, of course, also we've got Libra, right? So there's just
Yeah.
a lot of negative sentiment around it. And personally, that's making me buy Solana. You know, I like to see the discount and I'm picking it up.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a lot worse than picking up a coin that is underperforming the rest of the markets by the extent that they are right now. It doesn't mean it won't continue, but there at least aren't any signs that Solana's, whole entire network is at risk. And if you believe that Solana is going to exist for years and years to come, which I think even a lot of bears would admit, then there's probably going to be some relief rally coming up in, I don't know about the near future, but eventually once the capitulation really hits its peak, which it looks like it's close to doing.
There we go. That's the silver lining of this entire video. We could be reaching the peak of
Yeah.
capitulation.
And I'm checking out SWE just because they mentioned that too. It doesn't look quite as crazy extreme FUD as we saw with Solana, but there's definitely kind of a gradual decline in mood towards SWE, even, which is interesting because we had way more positivity back here when SWE was under $1, sitting at like 83 cents. It got all the way up to a all-time high of about $5.28. And then once it really started to decline over the past 6 weeks or so, the mood has kind of reset and actually gone quite low, even compared to when it was under $1.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that is super surprising. I would not have expected that at all. Basically, yeah, that's really surprising. I don't even know what to say.
It's a little under the radar, even though it's been one of the best performers of the past 6 months or so, alongside like XRP. And it's in the top 15 market cap. Like it just doesn't seem to get the same level of traction as, XRP. Cardano's got a massive community. Solana, of course. Chainlink is another one that always seems to have a ton of conversation. But SWE doesn't quite have that same social media following right now. I wouldn't be shocked if it changed over the next year or two, but for now, it seems to be a little under the radar in terms of discussions.
That means I could still be early.
There you go. Assuming the project is legitimate and many people are going to know way more about SWE than I do.
Oh yeah.
But I know they get a fair amount of development activity, which I can even graph. Let me take off these two. So this is just their overall development activity over time. If you look at the top left of my screen, you can see anywhere between like 40, 45, 46 GitHub events per day, which is quite good. If we go to like the beginning of its existence, we'll just drag it from here, I guess. So since March 2022, you can see the development activity over time is trending upwards, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign. So they definitely have a dedicated team that's working on improving and innovating the project.
Yeah, I like Sui. It's a good project. I enjoy using Sui a lot, especially. I'm a good Sweeble. I went to their base camp in Paris last year. I'm going to the one in Dubai this year.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's interesting. When I got there, I wasn't expecting what I walked into because they actually have a large focus of games on their chain. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of development activity for that. Not saying that I'm assuming that your numbers are more so for Sui itself, not projects within it. But
Correct.
yeah, now Sui is also a little interesting because it's actually the old Facebook team that I forget what the project was called that they were building, but they were building that for what I believe 32 billion people, and they're building Sui for the same thing. It's actually got the highest TPS capabilities than anything else out there.
Wow, I had no idea it was from the former Facebook or a group of former Facebook creators. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I forget what the crypto project was that they were building. I forget what it was called.
Was it Meta
Diem.
related? Was it called Meta?
No, it was Diem.
Oh, DM.
Yeah,
Is it just the letters DM or D?
DIEM.
Interesting. I wonder if that project never quite got its legs or it's just too niche to show up on our platform. But if it ever
It
does, we could check that out too.
it actually got shut down by them, and then
There you
that
go.
team left and started Sui. So it's based on the same language move.
Makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't look like we can actually search any phrase, which is cool. So if you go to social trends here and just type in any word, you can see how much it's being mentioned, like overall. Or you could even scroll down and see, like, okay, is it being talked about on Telegram versus Reddit, Twitter, 4chan, Bitcoin Talk, Farcaster? So obviously, with it being shut down, you're not going to see much discussion about it at all, but occasionally something shows up.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Let's see. Ivan S asked, you don't have to answer this if you want to, otherwise I'll direct him somewhere else. Ivan S asked, considering the bearish bias, do you have any reasonable time frame for recovery provided this is not a top?
Sure. So usually, if we continue to see even more capitulation than what we're seeing now, and it goes on for another few weeks, combine that with the fact that whales and sharks are moving back up, it would be a surprise if we don't see some relief rally by the next month or so. It could happen. There's been exceptions. There could be nefarious stuff going on. Another team like the FTX team that's trying to suppress prices. You never know. But based on the knowledge that we have, we're in a pretty good pattern right now of big crowd FUD and continued whale confidence. So I'd give it a month, and if nothing changes and whales continue to accumulate the dropped coins from retails, look to something like mid March, maybe late March, as a time where we've seen a pretty nice relief rally for those patient investors out there.
And that actually also lines up with how we feel at Cryptos R Us too. We were talking just the other day, George and I I believe he actually mentioned it on stream today also, but we're thinking about a new all-time high end of March. So that basically perfectly lines up with what we were talking about.
You're referring to Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I think it would lead, because even back in November when Trump was first elected, most of these rallies, as we went up to 75 for the first time, 80s, 90s, and eventually the 109K all time high, they were all kind of led by BTC. And then we'll see profit redistributions to other altcoins in waves. So don't expect this to be led by Dogecoin, right? uh, any new money coming into the markets, at least in the current state of crypto, it's usually going in through Bitcoin, maybe a little through Ethereum, um, and then it trickles into other altcoins with those profit redistributions.
Yeah, the money's cyclical, but it all begins with Bitcoin. You don't start with a poo coin and put it into Bitcoin. Well, unless you're a smart investor.
Yeah, you never know, but
Yeah.
totally, that tends to be the way it goes.
Yeah. I guess last question here, because this is more for you. Do you believe in the power law theory?
Power of law theory.
Yeah.
Uh, I can't remember. I've heard of it. I can't remember the exact theory. If they wouldn't mind reiterating it for me.
Um, let's see here. I'll just pull this. Actually, that's a lot to read. We'll address that next week. We'll talk about that off camera and address it then. Oh, power law. Maybe he's not talking about the power of law because I know what the power of law theory is. It's just kind of complicated to explain.
If there's like a 2 sentence summary or ChatGPT can put it together, I'd be happy to check it out.
Yeah, basically it describes the relationship between two quantities where a relative change in one quantity results in a proportional relative change in the other quantity. So scientific. Need to more explain like I'm 5.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So if I'm interpreting the question, they might be talking about the in terms of crypto, like a set supply of coins. If one side is dumping and the other's accumulating, does it have uh, an impact on the markets? And my answer to that would be yes. If I'm kind of surmising what you're asking in terms of this show today, if small wallets are dropping coins, large wallets are scooping them up, that tends to be the perfect bullish recipe for markets and sparks bull rallies. If the opposite happens and the bulls are dropping their coins on salivating retailers out there, it has a very negative impact on the market, kind of like what we saw throughout 2022. So in that respect, I very much do. I think crypto is a good representative of that theory that you're referring to.
Definitely. I would agree. I think that's about all we have for questions, other than the camera wall. Wait, something isn't right. Where's the robe? I reserved the robe for Dirty Degen streams, and the next one is tomorrow at 7 or wait, at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on Alpha First, and I will wear the robe.
I haven't seen
But
this mythical robe yet, but I'll have to check out the stream to get the reference.
yeah, I've been doing the show for I believe about a year now, and that's just kind of one of the things. I wear a robe, talk about some meme coins.
Love that.
Yeah, you know, it's called Dirty Degen, so may as well get degenerate and comfy.
No
But
better outfit than a robe to discuss those meme coins out there.
that's what I was thinking.
I'm with you.
But yeah, there's numerous robes. There's like, I didn't own a robe in my life, Brian, and now I have like 17. It's
I
ridiculous.
love that's so funny.
I just kept buying robes, and and then they started popping up for me on Amazon. I'm like, oh, that's a cool one. Add it to the cart.
I mean, you got on Bezos's algorithm. He knows what you're looking for now, so you're going to get those shilled at you all day, every day now.
Yeah. As long as the Echo doesn't start recommending them to me, like, check out this new robe we can add to your cart. No, please don't. But no, it was a great show, Brian. I'm looking forward to this a ton. There's a lot of information that you can go through and that you can provide that most people don't even realize is available to them. And it's really good information about understanding where the market's heading and just, however what the crowd is doing. And that's very important in being able to make an educated decision with investments, in my opinion.
Totally.
So
Yeah, I just hit the tip of the iceberg on our data today, but as we make more episodes, I'll dive into some of the more niche stuff that we look at, and I'm sure you guys watching will find some stuff that resonates with you, and we'll be happy to explain how they work along the way. So stay tuned.
yeah, definitely. So if you guys have anything specific you want us to look at or specific project or anything like that, drop it in the comments below. That way we can see it before next week and we can check it out. Otherwise, smash up the likes, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, because I will be back with another Dirty Degen stream. Otherwise, you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks, guys.